Hello, and welcome to the Orthodontic Products Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Werner. Today we have back with us Dr. Roger Levin from the practice management consulting firm Levin Group. He's here to help break down the findings of our 4th annual orthodontic practice survey. Dr. Levin, great to have you back with us.
Alison, I'm very excited to be with you. These surveys are really interesting. It's great to see where the orthodontic specialty is, and hopefully we get to help people improve their practices and their situations.
Yeah. So we're going to do this a little bit differently than we've done these podcasts in the past when we've looked at the results. So I want our audience to know that the survey was taken in February. So we asked all our readers, you asked your clients to fill out this survey in February. The article itself and the survey results were analyzed in early March. So a lot has happened since then in terms of the economy, from tariffs to economic policy. So before we kind of dig deep, because the 2024 results now have to be taken within the frame of mind of the economy changing. So before we kind of dive into those results and what they could mean, which is not necessarily what they meant in March, I want to ask you, where are we? What should doctors keep in mind as we go forward with this conversation?
Right. Well, and Alison, as you know, I love data. Our firm loves data. We try to support all of our consulting systems and policies and recommendations with data. And you're right, we are in, at the moment, uncharted waters. So I think there are 3 major points. Number one, this survey was done for the year 2024. Mm-hmm. And all in all, and I know we'll come back to it, it was a pretty good year for orthodontics, because there are other headwinds we'll talk about that may have made the results not as excellent as we might like, but they were still overall pretty good. Number 2, everything has changed, and I'd say about the last 8 to 10 weeks. We have all kinds of not clearly defined tariff policies coming out affecting the economy. We act, other countries react. So from an economic standpoint, nobody knows what's going to happen. We only know what's happened so far until today. I will make a prediction. I'm not a gloom and doom person. I'm an upbeat person, but I think our economy is going to have a fairly rough time for a while based on everything I'm seeing. Hope I'm wrong, but I have to help prepare our audience. What do we do if the economy does slow down as orthodontic practices? And then number 3, we don't know how long anything is going to go on or what else will be added to it. We're playing a little bit of a act-react type of game right now. So, as I always say to people, the only thing you can control is your practice. So let's do the very best job we can with the orthodontic practice today.
Yeah. Okay. So you noted in the article that you wrote up on the survey results that practice performance improved across several metrics in 2024. So let's talk about what those improvements were and what you view as the most actionable going forward with this new economic reality.
Yeah. Oddly enough, and this may sound surprising, the first question I ask myself, I always go into everything by asking, what's the big question here? Mm-hmm. And to me, the big question is, how much unused potential does an orthodontic practice have? Now, that may sound funny when we're talking about economics, but I was trying to evaluate, as we have for many years, if most orthodontic practices fall into a certain range. And, the average seemed to be around 1.5 million per year, exactly $1,588,744 for the other data nerds like me out there. Yeah. What is the unused potential? Because at $1.5 million, you're making a great living, especially if you're falling at a 50% annual overhead. So you don't have to worry about it. But if that $1.5 million becomes $1.2 million or $1.1 million, and somebody might say, well, wait a minute, Roger, nothing's going to fall that fast. And my cute, funny, clever answer would be, have you seen the stock market lately? So, which is a barometer. It's not the economy, but it's a barometer of the economy.
Right.
The economy. So I looked at the unused potential. We believe most practices, most orthodontists could do 2.2 million.
Okay.
We have many that do, some that do more, some that do less.
Mhm.
But we know it can be done. And anybody listening, your first reaction might be, well, no, that can't be right, except I can show you tons of practices doing it,
Mhm.
which is just my proof point that yes, you can do it and you should be optimistic.
Mhm.
So the answer to the question was probably a $500,000 to $700,000 in increased production. I'm going to give you a key reason in a moment it can be done.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my answer to your question is you need to start accessing that potential now.
Mm.
Because if you're at 1.5 and you can grow to 2, but your 1.5 drops, you might still be at 1.5.
Right.
So you always want to do two things as a CEO. You want to grow your business and you want to protect your business. And accessing the unused potential is what most orthodontic practices need to do now. The truth is, most offices don't know how to do it. They've never had to do it. They've never worried about it. But I'll add one example here. I know it's early for examples, but just look at remote monitoring. I am, anybody who reads me knows I'm very big, and I think it's going to be a very big shift in orthodontics.
Yeah.
If you can open up 10, 15, 20% chair time, and by the way, you can still grow without doing this. This is not
Mhm.
the only way to do it,
Mhm.
and fill it in with new patients, you'll have that increased growth that we need because a slower economy is going to have some negative effects on orthodontic practices.
Right. What would you say to smaller markets that maybe think, I can't be a $2.2 million practice? My community, my market doesn't allow for that.
That's a really good point. And this is again, I love surveys and I love other
Mhm.
people's surveys and I love talking to people, but
Mhm.
we have the only survey where I've ever seen a measurement of the major metropolitan area versus the, city versus small, medium town to small town. And the big drop off takes place at small town. That's a
Yeah.
very valid point. It's a huge drop off of almost $300,000 to $400,000 in average production. But it's the same ratio. If you're doing 1.1 in a small town, which is the average, or 1.18, call it 1.2 million, then you could probably do 1.5 to 1.6. You won't do as well as the major metropolitan areas, but the ratio of growth will be the same if you access the unused potential. And that means having all of your management systems properly in place, having a TC who's trained for modern sales, not the sales of yesterday, a customer service profile for all mothers, fathers, and new patients, and referrals. And when you put those together, most practices can be 20 to 30% larger in production than they are today.
So 93% of the orthodontists we surveyed were confident about the next 5 years. Again, the
Yes.
survey was done in February. So
Right.
I'm gonna caveat this every time.
Yeah.
What let's look at the 2024 though in isolation. What were the factors driving that optimism, and how can that optimism maybe help with the uncertainty that's coming?
Right. And, the analogy is there's also a Fortune 500 CEO survey
Hmm.
on economic and consumer confidence.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, whatever we knew 2 to 3 months ago is
Hmm.
no longer valid, and
Yeah.
we don't know what valid is going to mean.
Hmm.
So the reality is that we came out of COVID. 2020, kind of a rough year for a lot of practices,
Hmm.
although there are practices that caught it up. And ortho did well because, unlike the rest of dentistry, they still had to see their patients, even if they did it
Hmm.
remotely. People are in braces, they've got
Right.
aligners, they needed to get started. And then 2021 came, and that was actually a record year
Yeah.
for many practices. The
Hmm.
pent up demand factor was huge. It was a record year for many, many of our clients.
Hmm.
I think we're really good at what we do, but we weren't as good as the growth that we got in 21. We had some
Mm.
help from pent up demand.
Yeah.
2022 was the worst year since 2008.
Hmm.
For two reasons. Now, production actually went up, which was surprising to me. I thought production would be down a little bit. It was up a little bit. but overhead skyrocketed. And there were two reasons for that. Staff compensation went up on average 10 to 12%. And then supply chain inflation on other products and services went up.
Yeah.
So because of that, the rise in production was less than the rise in overhead. So in 2022, if you looked at production, it was okay. If you looked at overhead, it was bad.
Right.
And if you looked at profit, it was bad because the overhead overtook the profit. 2023, overhead did not go up that much. Production went up a little bit again, so that was good. And 24 was the best year since 21. So I think in people's minds, they looked at 24 and said, hey, I'm up 3 or 4%. The average was up around 3.5%. I feel good. The headwinds are good. The next 5 years should look good. All of that before we started discussing tariffs and other issues that are impinging upon the economy and slowing us down at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned there that overhead kind of remained stable in this year's survey compared year over year, but compensation costs have increased. With those two factors in mind, how can practices kind of balance that rising staff pay and long-term profitability if those costs are likely to increase over the coming years or the next year?
I can actually answer that one because fortunately, our number one focus at Levin Group is increasing practice production. Mm-hmm. And as I tell every doctor, your goal is to increase production every year. Mm-hmm. You may have a down year, but you should not have too many.
Yeah.
And the only answer is production. And here's why. If we had a new client, we might be able to lower their overhead 3 or 4%, maybe in a minority of cases, 5 or 6%. But really, most practices, if we really scrutinize it, we really eliminate waste and we put in efficiency, overhead's going to go down about 3 to 4%. Now, that's $3,000 or $4,000 of profit, theoretically, on every $100,000 of production. That's not bad. Yeah. But the fact is, you can only lower overhead by a finite amount. And once you've lowered it, you're done. There's nowhere else to go. As I like to say, you can't fire the same assistant twice. So, and I'm joking when I say that.
Yeah.
But production is theoretically infinite. It can go up 5%, 10, 15. I mean, very unusual, but we've had clients over the years that doubled, in a year. Very unusual. I don't want to misrepresent what we do.
Yeah.
I'm just making the point that, so whatever overhead has done, it's more important to focus on increasing production because if production outpaces overhead by enough, you have more profit. And if profit goes up every year, then you're going to go from a good practice to a great practice eventually because you have a compounding effect. It'll just keep growing every year.
Yeah.
So the number one recommendation I have for orthodontists is production, which means new patient starts, referrals, new patient starts. That's a huge area we focus on to get production up. Everything else after that is management logistics.
Okay. Well, speaking of that management logistics, we talked a little bit about this before, but remote monitoring. So 30% of practices reported this year that they're using it, with some reporting 24 to 40 week intervals between appointments. So you've talked a little bit about why practices should really consider adopting remote monitoring. What's the risk of waiting too long to adopt this model?
Well, I'll give you my view of remote monitoring. I like to look at the future and try to come up with, data-driven predictions, but they're still predictions. And, I'm always fascinated when I have something wrong that I find out later because it's fun to look back and say, where did I miss on that? Now, let me warn the audience that if I'm wrong, you're only going to be better off. One of the principles I hold myself to is, like, for example, if I said, hey, the economy looks like it's going to be rugged, get your production up, you go get your production up, and we have a great economy, you're only better, then you only have higher production.
True.
So
yeah.
I hold myself to not hurting anybody with bad predictions.
Yeah.
Having said that, the bracket and wire interval was 7 weeks in office, 8 weeks with remote monitoring. Keep in mind how close those two are. And then with the aligners, it was 10 weeks in office and 16 weeks on average remote monitoring. Now, I'm not just looking at remote monitoring. We've been studying it. We've been talking to companies. We're looking at the AI. We're looking at the FDA approvals. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think we're in the infancy of remote monitoring. Artificial intelligence is a huge part of it. I think the analogy would be the introduction of aligners. I think that was 2004. Huge resistance. Nobody liked it. Nobody wanted it. It couldn't be as good until they found out it was, and it's growing every year in orthodontics. And so we have some resistance, but I think remote monitoring is in the early stages, and then it's going to just take off. There's going to be an inflection point where it's going to take off. My warning is that the challenge is you can't just do a little bit of it. You really need to change your systems to make it work. But what I love about remote monitoring, because I'm a believer in the quality, and you have to learn how to build relationships remotely. And we know how to do this. This can be done.
Yeah.
But and you have to know how to collect your money remotely. Well, we're pretty good at that now. We don't remember. It used to be religion that a patient had to come in every 4 weeks. I mean, that was orthodontic religion. Until it wasn't. So I think as it takes off, what we're going to see, and we're doing a huge research study, we're adding it into our consulting because it's going to open up chair time. And literally, there are practices that will be able to double or triple because of remote monitoring by opening chair time. And that's just a function of getting more new patients into the practice. And I'll tell you who's going to go first at that. The high-end practices are going to figure this out fastest. They're going to open up chair time. We have clients today. I'm not an orthodontist, but as far as I'm aware, their referrals are great, so I assume the quality is good, that are seeing aligner patients every 28 to 32 weeks. In Europe, we have clients, because we have a European part of our company, that deliver the trays and never see the patient again. It's all remote till the end. And I'm not promoting the idea. I know that's a stretch for some people. But you and I have been around long enough, Alison. A lot of things that are resisted today become normal tomorrow.
True.
So remote monitoring is going to allow for huge production increases. But you have to operate with different systems, and that's why we're building them now. Your TC process is different. You need a remote monitoring manager is the name we've come up with. They have to know, well, what do I do when they're not getting back to me with their scans? But this is going to become normal. And then for parents, it's going to be a godsend. Somebody said to me, well, how are you going to build relationships? I'm like, the mother cares a lot more about not coming in than having a relationship with you. So for the next few years, remote monitoring will also be a huge marketing benefit to a practice until it goes mainstream, like aligners. So you can market aligners, but everybody has them now. Remote monitoring is going to become we're teaching our TCs how to make a huge benefit out of longer intervals between visits.
Okay. So it becomes that practice differentiator.
For now, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, another one of the results showed that there's been an increase in adult referrals and aligner use now presents new opportunities. How can practices better kind of capitalize on the adult orthodontic market in 2025, given the uncertainty?
Right. Well, let's start with the reality. Here we go again with things that can't be done. So 1980s, 1990s, orthodontist after orthodontist said to me and to our consultants, well, I don't want to treat adults. I don't like treating adults. Because they actually have an opinion and they ask questions and they don't come in headphones zoomed out. So I have said for years, and even today, the adult market is a huge pioneering territory for us to go after. It's massive. If the AAO, which is a great organization, but if they had unlimited resources, I would call them and say, you need a massive adult orthodontic campaign on all social media sites. And that's the place to be. So I think we're going to see a couple things with uncertain economy. First of all, A lot of parents are going to hold off on their children's orthodontics. They always believe they'll get back to it, but they don't. And some adults are going to say, well, wait a minute, you know what? I don't like what's happening. Before I spend $5,000 or $6,000 on ortho, maybe I won't do it. Except, and here's the exception, even in down economies, cosmetics sell well. I mean, Alison, I've known you a long time.
Yeah.
You always look great. Do you foresee with this economy, you're going to change your shampoo, buy $3 glasses, no makeup, and get
I'm
rid
not
of your...
going to lie. I just did a big purchase this weekend because I was worried about tariffs on certain products.
Right. And if you use those up, I've got a feeling you're going to find a way. So
Yes.
we need to think of teeth as cosmetic, and we need to market adult cosmetics. Most adults only want one thing, a prettier smile. And aligners were the huge breakthrough because they didn't want metal and wire in their
Right.
mouth. It wasn't convenience. It was strictly, they didn't want to look like that. So aligners are growing in orthodontic practices consistently. And you are going to see more and more adults for cosmetic reasons having aligner therapy. Now, what I haven't figured out yet is what should you be doing with your fees? Because the aligners have higher lab fees in many cases, but you also have one DSO, for example, that has their own aligners. They've given it a branded name, and they're $1,999 versus an average of $5,800 in orthodontic practices.
Okay.
You may remember early on
Yeah.
when orthodontists felt like they were being shoved into aligners, they took their fee and said, well, I'm just going to add $1,800 to it. I'll just add the lab fee. So they were really expensive.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been writing about, and you've seen it because I love writing for you. You're the editor, so I work for you. And is fee wars. Fee wars. We're going to start to see, they've been here. I've seen the billboards in Florida. I'm seeing the aligners for under $2,000.
Yeah.
When I spoke at an orthodontic conference about a month ago, and when I finished, a young woman came up to me, orthodontist, and she said, "Can you help me?" I said, "Sure. What do you want to talk about?" Because when I'm doing that, I love to help and I love to make a difference. She said, "My fee is $6,200 for an ortho case, and a new young orthodontist, not general dentist, but orthodontist, has moved into town." And he's giving out flyers to all the GPs saying he'll do the cases for $3,500. And she's losing cases. People are coming in, hearing her fee and leaving. So we're going to see fee wars. And I'm going to make a prediction. I am not promoting it. I don't necessarily like it. I'm just telling the orthodontic community, I think we're going to see practices that might have more than one set of fees to address this. It's not here yet, but I'm seeing some of it in response to competition. Competition's growing in ortho. 24 was a good year, but even a bad economy creates opportunities to compete differently and more effectively.
So what would your advice be then to practices that need to bring down that aligner fee? What should they be doing to offset that?
Sure. And let me say again, I'm not recommending to our audience to lower your fees. That's not my message. I'm giving you, but when you talk about strategy, everything should be considered. It's remote monitoring because what you need to do is see patients less, open up chair time, have better referral marketing and community marketing, attract more patients, have excellent fee options. For example, patient financing. A lot of orthodontists, most resist it because their view is, well, wait a minute, Roger, I have an interest-free payment plan. You can pay us over 18 months, 2 years, whatever the case may be. What they're missing is that there are more and more people that can't afford the deposit or the monthly fees. You and I are talking about tariffs and the economy and the stock market. There are a lot of people in this country that are, they live paycheck to paycheck. But they do want ortho for their kid, and they sometimes want it for themselves. So patient financing is just access to debt is another great opportunity. But too many orthodontic practices have patient financing and go out of their way not to tell anybody. So you don't have to necessarily lower your fee if you have better options for payment at the same
Okay.
time.
Okay.
But the answer would be efficiency and technology. Both of those are critically important in being highly efficient, a smooth running office that can see more patients, higher volume. Orthodontics is a volume-based business. We have orthodontists who easily do 1 million a day or more annualized. And if they're doing it, others can do it. Assuming the market, like a small town, you might not do 3 million in 3 days, but you can do better than you're doing today.
So the 2024 results showed that there's still a little bit of volatility on the labor side, so in terms of staffing.
Yeah.
With that in mind, what's your kind of advice given the uncertainty of the next, 10 months, 8 months?
Yeah. I have written extensively about this, and it keeps changing. But here's the bottom line. We have, my words, a staffing crisis. A few years ago, I might have said staffing challenge. We have a staffing crisis. Orthodontics is getting more complex, more digital. We need better trained people. And when we hire, we're getting lesser trained people for more money. It's just the way things are.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change.
Yeah.
So first of all, the best way to not have to train new people is to keep the team you have. So one body of science I've worked on is how do we increase staff longevity? I don't know if you and I have ever talked about this, but we have a 31-year ongoing study of top 10% producing practices, including in ortho.
Okay.
And when I started the study, my first question was, and I hope this is kind of interesting real quickly.
Yeah.
When I started the study, my first question was, are these just superstars in the top 10% that are non-reproducible? Because if that was the case, I wouldn't have done the study, but we did it to start learning what are the best practices in the country doing. And we found over time, and this is both objective and subjective data, we found over time 17 principles that they generally have in common.
Okay.
So that might be a podcast for us one day, Alison.
Yeah, definitely.
But one of the principles was higher staff longevity. The average staff longevity in the top 10% is 11 years. So imagine if your average is 11 years of staff. And by the way, you may be saying to yourself, to our listeners, well, I got people been here 20 years. Yeah, but you also have people been there for 6 months.
Right.
So that brings the average down.
Yeah.
Okay. So we found that they have higher staff longevity. And by the way, it's not that they're any better early in their careers at staff management or leadership. They actually had the same turnover rates as the average orthodontic practice, but they were people who could not tolerate poor performance, and they would go through the pain and suffering until they just kept hiring until they either got lucky or figured it out or got the right person.
Okay.
Okay, so given that, the first step is excellent leadership. We need brand new models of leadership today because today's worker is not yesterday's worker. I'll tell you this story. We have a client hired a brand new assistant about a year ago, and the second day, at the end of the morning, she looked at the dentist. This was a general practice, but it's equivalent to ortho.
Yeah.
And she said, "I'm going home." And the dentist said, "What do you mean you're going home?" I'm going to go home for the rest of the day. He said, "Well, why are you going home?" "I'm sad." That's a real story. So she went home and he said, "You can stay home." But the point was that, that's an extreme example, but it's a different worker set of values today. And you might not like them. It doesn't matter. It's what it is. So number one, we need new leadership. Number two, we've got to get much better at recruiting. You want to be recruiting on a regular basis. You want to make sure you've got up-to-date job descriptions, great ads. The ad can't be orthodontic assistant wanted. It's got to talk about the culture, the practice, the fun, the enjoyment. Give me those soft values and skills where I say to myself, whoa, I'd like to work there. I'm very flattered. I got a call the other day from someone asking if we had any openings for consulting. She said, from what I've heard, I really want to work for your consulting firm. I'm like, that makes me feel good because it means that we treat our people well. That makes me feel good. Number three, get good at interviewing and plan to hire in one interview. Now that's 180 from what I used to teach. Never hire in one interview.
Okay.
3 interviews, 2 with the doctor and 1 with the staff.
Yeah.
Not anymore. We
Really?
get the resume in advance. We
Mm-hmm.
get the references in advance. If they look good, we make an offer the first interview, because by the time you bring them back, they'll taken a job somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you got
Okay.
to be smart.
Okay.
Signing bonuses, longevity bonoses. I've got a
Mm,
whole list of things you can do. And then finally, make your office fun.
yeah.
So I gave a list. I'll give a quick list of things to our listeners. Somebody said, well, what do you mean by fun? What can I do? Okay, number 1, give out lunch gift certificates. 2, as surprises out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
2, bring in lunch. 3, give your staff restaurant gift certificates to take their family for dinner. Fill the staff room refrigerator. Don't do these all at once. Surprise
Yeah.
them. Fill the staff room refrigerator with food that snacks they can eat.
Mm-hmm.
Put snacks in the staff room. Snacks are a permanent benefit. Get a basket. Some people might not like this. It's okay. This is just one of the ideas.
Yeah.
But we have clients who do it too. Nothing's 100%. Get a big basket for the staff room. Fill it up with miniature liquors. Put a sign, please take 2 or 3 home, and then a
Uh-huh.
joke, please do not drink these during the workday. Staff meetings, put a Post-it note under 1 or 2 chairs. Make sure if your staff all sits in the same place, after they sit down, make them get up and change around.
Mm,
Whoever's sitting on the Post-it note chair gets a $100 bill. There are endless ideas.
okay.
Make your practice fun. People
Mm-hmm.
want to enjoy it. But having said that, the staffing crisis, in my opinion, will continue for 5 to 10 years. So training is now critically important. You need technology trainers, systems management systems trainers, people who build you new schedules, referral marketing expertise. And by the way, to the orthodontist, you are very smart people. I went to school with you. You got it. You're a specialist because you're smart, but you can't know it all. And in today's world, you've got to access experts, whether it's a CPA, an attorney, an estate planner, a consultant, a marketer, whatever it may be. You need experts to train and retrain your team regularly. You do not want this. If you keep the exact same people, you want a different team 2 years or 3 years from now. Same people, new skills.
Okay. So, kind of for my last question, it's going to be a 3-parter. I want to take a look at or get your advice for orthodontists at the 3 stages of a career. So, let's start with the orthodontist, the new orthodontist, entering private practice today or in the next couple of months. What would be your advice for the year to come? What should they prioritize in this first year?
Well, without question, referral marketing.
Okay.
The bottom line is if you have enough referrals, you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
If you got a lot of referrals, you're more than fine.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm a young what you're describing for the most part, not 100%, are younger
Mm-hmm.
orthodontists,
Yeah.
often married, often have children.
Mm-hmm.
Get out in the community, go to everything, join everything, be
Mm-hmm.
at the sporting events, be at the PTA.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're young and have a lot of energy, go spend time with your referring doctors. If you don't have referring doctors, go meet them. If you're inhibited about it, they love to meet you. They're more than willing to meet new specialists, build relationships. This is what we do. We've worked with almost 13,000 specialists
Mm-hmm.
in 41 years, and a good half of those refer our referral marketing. We wouldn't be effective if we couldn't get general dentists to start referring to our clients. We do it
Right.
every single day.
Yeah.
So don't be inhibited and don't be put off by somebody who doesn't engage in a relationship with you. It's a numbers game. You chase 10 or 20 to get 5 to 10. It's okay. As I like to say once in a while to a client, everybody's not going to love you, and that's okay, as long as we get enough people loving you. So in the early stages, and the other thing is when you're younger, you got a lot of energy, work lean. You don't need every staff member on the planet
Okay.
because they're really expensive today.
Mm-hmm.
You can have people doing multiple jobs. Levin Group used to be opposed to cross training. We like specialization. Now we like cross training because if somebody leaves, somebody else has to know how to
Yeah.
do it. But when you're younger, you got great energy. You can have a great time working really hard and not even being tired at the end of the day.
Right.
Don't get a mentality of I shouldn't have to market. Yes, you should. And by the way, that will make you incredibly successful.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now for the mid-career.
Yeah. Mid-career, I would describe as you are busy, you're successful,
Mm-hmm.
you got referrals coming in, because we're not talking about practices falling off the cliff here.
Mm-hmm.
Your staff is competent. Uh, Again, most staff need new skills.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say they can be better, because that's like a judgment word.
Yeah.
They can improve. They can improve
Yeah.
performance, which
Mm-hmm.
I come in every day, in my career to improve performance. So I have no
Mm-hmm.
problem asking others to think that way.
Yeah.
Things are good, but there's another term we use for that called level 3.
Okay.
You're maxed out in many cases, partly because you've got a bad schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I say that, your first thought is, I have a really good schedule. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we build schedules based on mathematics and data. Your schedule is typically 30% below capacity, and that's before remote monitoring. So you might
Okay.
actually be 150% below capacity.
Okay.
Having said that, um, things are okay, and you're making a living, assuming this economy doesn't go where there's a possibility it might
Yeah.
go into recession.
Yeah.
So the key there is working on upgrading your systems, because the better your systems, and then having your team absolutely follow the systems. Right now, you're running your practice by habit. It's okay,
Mm-hmm.
because the supply and demand has worked. There's enough demand for orthodontics. Well, that demand slows down in a couple of ways. One, if the economy slows down. Two, for example, that DSO I mentioned, and this is just fact. I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not pro or con, so to speak,
Yeah.
but I don't have the luxury of being pro or con. I have to deal with what's happening.
Right.
But that DSO I mentioned, these are general dentists doing the ortho. Now, the orthodontists hearing this are probably tearing their hair out.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had these discussions many, many times. But the fact is, they're still doing it, and they're still
Yeah.
selling it, and it's competition.
Yeah.
And they're 1/3 the fee of most orthodontists. So you really want to be as efficient and well systemized as you can. You need your referral marketing firing on all cylinders. Even if you don't think you need more new patients, you need to protect your future. And then, critically important at this stage, is work on your customer service, because this is where it starts to break down. This is where the staff gets a little more immune to the patients. I was talking in another webinar about customer service, and my philosophy is every parent and patient is a VIP and needs to be literally looked at and treated that way. But their customer service is not an accident. It is a system. It requires training. But that would be my huge focus: efficiency and service in the mid-career. And then the other thing, Allison, is saving for retirement, because I know that's not our topic today, but I've given lectures on wealth accumulation for
Yeah.
orthodontists, not because I'm an investment advisor, although
Mm-hmm.
actually I am a registered investment advisor, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't use that at all.
Yeah.
It's general concepts. But if you're not saving well in mid-career, you're going to be working a long time.
Okay. All right. So now for those orthodontists who are nearing the end of their career and are looking at retirement, what's your advice with this uncertainty in mind if they're planning to get out in the next year or two?
Yeah. Well, uncertainties are definite.
Yeah.
I don't see anything that's going to make our investments better in the near future. We might be, it might come back. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, because we
Right.
don't have any data
Yeah.
for this. We know what a real estate recession looks like. We know what a technology recession looks like.
Yeah.
So, by the time people are hearing this, it could be better, it could be worse.
Mhm.
My guess is it's going to be worse. I'm hoping it's not a lot worse. That's my optimism.
Yeah.
But not optimism based on anything other than I want to be optimistic, because I like to be. So reality is, for between mid-career, late career, and late career, I would offer the following points. Get a financial plan, and I don't mean one that's spit out by one of the brokerage firms off a computer. Get a real financial plan done. Number two, when you calculate how much you need to retire, calculate it without the sale of your practice. These are Roger Levin's recommendations.
Okay.
They're not right, they're not wrong,
Mhm.
but anybody doing what I say will be in good shape.
Okay.
If you don't have to sell your practice to retire, the sale becomes a bonus. So I've counseled
Mm.
forever,
Okay.
don't depend on the sale because, depending on economies,
Right.
even a good practice might not be saleable.
Right.
And I've been through lots of sales and I've seen just about everything,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be good or it can get pretty ugly.
Yeah.
Number three, no matter what your financial planner tells you you're going to need, they are wrong. 100% of the time, they are wrong. Now, how can I say, I said that to get everybody's attention, like,
Yeah.
Roger, what do you know that they don't know? Nothing. Here's what I know. They can only base your financial plan on what we know today. So if you had a financial plan done 4 months ago, it just became, and you have it done again today, it's a totally different look as
Right.
to how much you have to put away. 5% growth is great, except when the market's going down or the bond values are going down. And my last suggestion is, and the younger you hear this, the better, whatever they tell you in financial planning, you need to go for 20% more. Tell your financial planner, redo my plan, assuming I need, let's say they say to you, you need 5 million or 4 million to retire,
Mm-hmm.
add 20% to whatever they tell you. Once again, if I'm wrong, you're only better off.
Right.
Give it to charity, give it to your
Mm-hmm.
kids. But if I'm right and you don't do it, you're going to be working more years. And the
Mm.
average age of an orthodontist retiring is near 70 today. And
Really?
yeah, and I'm certain it's going to go higher in the
Huh.
next few years. And I said that before the whole tariff discussion.
Oh, okay.
Just that taxes are going up, cost of
Mm-hmm.
living is going up. Right now, the only thing everybody talks about are eggs. They've
Mm-hmm.
gone up. But the fact is, it's going to cost more to live in the world.
Yeah.
And therefore, by the time you get there, you may not be in a position to retire. So,
Mm.
um, and don't say to yourself, "Well, I'll work till I'm 75." You might. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm a third generation dentist. My
Mm-hmm.
grandfather, general dentist, but
Yeah.
he retired at 79, not because he had to. He loved dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
But ortho is different than any other part of dentistry. And you and I've never talked about this before either.
Mm.
A 70-year-old oral surgeon, no problem.
Yeah.
Endodontist, busy as can be. General
Mm-hmm.
dentist with a great patient base, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
When you cross that 60, 65-year-old age bracket in ortho,
Mm-hmm.
your referrals naturally begin to decline. They don't have to,
Oh.
but you're older, you're out of touch, you're definitely far away from kids. You don't
Ah.
have, younger orthodontists in the community are taking away referrals because they're in those natural positions. So when we get a call from a 55, 60, 65-year-old orthodontist who's down 30%, they're in big trouble. That's a hard turnaround.
Okay.
So again, save early.
Mm-hmm.
Compound interest is great. Even in a bad economy,
Mm-hmm.
it will come back. Know how much you have to save, add 20%, put yourself in a great position, and don't need the sale of your practice. Because if you're 70, your practice could be good or it could be half of what it used to be. And we get these calls every month here from different orthodontists looking for some formula for help.
Well, Dr. Levin, thank you again for breaking this down for us and
Yeah,
for bringing in what is currently going on so we
yeah.
can make this practical for orthodontists for the year to come. So thank you again so much.
Oh, I've loved doing this with you. And I hope next year when we do this and complete the survey, I've got really good news. And I want
Yeah.
to say to everybody, I was so wrong. That'd be great.
Well, you had plenty of caveats, and you said,
Yeah,
like, if you just follow the advice, you could be, if you're wrong, you're still ahead. So,
abs-
yes.
I hope to always do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we'll see you for the results of 2025 a year from now, and we'll see where it all stands. So, thank you again.
Great. Thank you, Allison.
As always, thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the Orthodontic Products Podcast to keep up with the latest episodes, and be sure to check out orthodonticproductsonline.com to keep up with the latest industry news. Until next time, take care.